So I go.
Yes.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Carla Reale, and I'm a legal scholar and researcher from University of Genoa. And I am involved in the EDIRE project. And this morning, we're going to talk about responsible research innovation and its relationship between gender and intersectionality. So what we're going to do together in this 1-hour training is to understand what is EDI, and then to understand what is the relationship between equity, diversity, and inclusion, and responsible research innovation. At the end of these first two parts, we are going to discuss some definition and terminology regarding the gender plus dimension in the Horizon program. And then we're going to share some definition regarding gender and gender-related terminology, such as sex assigned at birth, gender identity, sexual orientation, and so on. And also we're going to discuss what is intersectionality. Of course, this training will not be theoretical only. I am going to give you a couple of examples on how to foster the gender or intersectional lens in your research. And at the very end of the training, I'm going to share a list of useful tools that you may also find on YouTube after our live session. Okay, so let's start. What is EDI, which is crucial in our data project, for example? So usually you can find it defined as equality or equity. And we're going to discuss the meaning of this term in a moment. Diversity and inclusion. This is a terminology which is used by university in different countries to talk about the ongoing efforts in tackling issues that are linked to, of course, equality, diversity, and inclusion of students, but also academic staff and non-academic staff inside the institution. At the beginning, the focus was merely on the gender issues, but nowadays, the notion of equality, diversity, inclusion is a little bit more wide, it's wider, okay? So now it pertains all the underrepresented groups, and we're going to discuss about this later on. We can say somehow that the origin of the EDI initiatives is rooted in the European context in the UK, in the initiative of the Athena Swan consortium in 2005. Okay, so let's discuss briefly each part of this definition of EDI. So when we are talking about equality or equity, actually I prefer equity, but they are used in an interchangeable way nowadays. We are talking about fairness. We are talking about justice. For our purpose, actually, equity means that everyone, all persons, but also all groups of persons, must be treated equally, and everyone should be given equal opportunities. What does this mean nowadays? It doesn't mean that everyone deserves the same exact treatment. On the contrary, equity nowadays means acknowledging that there are some inequalities that are rooted in some historical condition, in contemporary injustice, and there are some systemic barriers against some people. So equity doesn't mean everyone should be treated in the same way, but it means that efforts must be done in order to remove systemic barriers. and to combat the biases that some individuals face. At the same time, equity means taking into account everyone's identities and experiences, but also backgrounds, and allocate resources according to this in order to reach equal outcomes. Then we go to the diversity part. Diversity means that in a group of people, there are many variations in terms of characteristics. These differences can be related to many factors, such as race, such as place of origin, so geography, religion, having or not an immigrant background, ethnic origin, disability, sex and gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, but also age, and many other aspects of identity that might be relevant in a context. So if everyone is different and differences are what makes us unique, we can say that under the umbrella of VDI, diversity means giving space and value for differences to be visible and to be legitimate. So what we can do is to build alliances between different people in order to combat discrimination, practice respect, be aware of the fact that diversity is not only about being, but it can be also about different ways of knowing. But diversity means also that we need to understand that some identities might be privileged. So, of course, we are all different, but we should practice positioning. So we should understand that some form of identities are related to some privileges in our society, while others carry on some disadvantages. And at the same time, we should be able to understand and also celebrate the fact that as human, we are all interdependent. And then it comes to inclusion. So the last part of the EDI umbrella. So inclusion is a notion that can be somehow problematized, okay, it can be discussed. In our context, inclusion means somehow creating an environment that ensure that everyone can be treated in the same way, in a non-discriminatory way, and that everyone can have the same opportunities, but at the same time, everyone feels welcomed, respected, but also valued. So inclusion, again, means a promotion, an active promotion of the conditions where everyone can participate fully, but also contribute to the environment. It's important to understand that you can see the figures in the presentation. Inclusion doesn't mean the first, you see the circle one, it doesn't mean this, but it means the second drawing somehow, because it doesn't mean that the individual, the person, should adjust to the given environment, which represents somehow the social norm. The social norm in terms of gender, in terms of disability, in terms of age, in terms of race/ethnic background, and so on, okay? Inclusion, real inclusion, means that the environment must be changed and adjust in order to accommodate each and everyone. So the notion of inclusion in our framework serves as a way to tackle the idea that environments, for example, working environments, as we are discussing in our case, are neutral. On the contrary, they are shaped by social forces and they represent the norm. And inclusion means that the environment must be changed and adapt to accommodate each and every identity. Okay? So we are getting to the second step we're trying to do together. So the relationship between the EDI principle and responsible research innovation. So what is responsible research innovation? I know that inside the EDIRE project, there are some training, especially in particular focused on the concept of responsible research innovation. So I'm going just to give you a couple of definition and hints. So we can say that this is a terminology which is widely used in the context of EU, but also nowadays on a global level. But we can say that somehow it was born in the European context in order to describe the fact that scientific research needs to consider its effects, but also impacts on the environment and on society in general. The notion of a responsible research innovation is embedded, is rooted, we can say, in the Article 3 of the Treaty on the European Union, which states that the EU shall promote scientific advance, but also combat social exclusion and discrimination, okay? So the idea behind the notion, the concept of responsible research innovation is that scientific research should mainly focus on the challenges which arise from society. So its main goal somehow is to align research and also innovation to societal values, need, and also expectation. So it's to foster a good dialogue between society and research, and to make research serve society and values such as equality again, okay? So we can say that responsible research and innovation was already very important in the last program, Horizon 2020, and now is even more crucial under the Horizon program. The principle of responsible research innovation are mainly 6, okay? But here in this slide, I decided to present 4 aspects, okay? Which are anticipation, which means that research should take account of opportunities, risk, environmental concern at a design phase, okay? Inclusion, which means that research should be involved, actively involved, and promote the hearing of underrepresented voices, but also stakeholder, both in the design phase, but also in the implementation phase of research, and probably even in the communication phase. Then we have reflexivity, which means the fact that research should always take into account, in consideration, the context of where it operates. And research should pose questions regarding its norm and values, and also the impacts it might have in society. And the fourth is responsiveness, which means somehow being capable of adjusting and making the right change when research is advancing, okay? And when more knowledge is built, okay? And at the same time, responsiveness means also taking action in order to address possible unintended consequences of research. We can say that in this framework, especially at the beginning, because we can see somehow that at a certain point, the notion of gender was accompanied also by intersectionality, but we can discuss this later on. One of the key aspects, according to the European Union, of responsible research innovation is gender equality. Why? Under the umbrella of RRI, gender equality means unlocking the full potential of research in relation to society, okay? According to the EU, the disadvantages and inequalities between women and men affect research and innovation and the harmony of society in general, okay? So inequalities are society. Under the umbrella of responsible research innovation, gender equality means considering three different aspects. It means tackling gender imbalances inside research institution, so women's integration, both horizontally, so in different disciplines, such as STEM disciplines, where we know that women are usually underrepresented, but also hierarchically. So it means breaking the glass ceiling. We know that women in the most the higher position are underrepresented, okay? But it also means integrate gender perspective inside academic policies, but also fundings. And the last part of it is in the integration of a broader gender perspective in research. So the need to consider gender as a crucial factor of research. In the slide, you can see some data from She Figures. So the report that each year the EU carry on regarding gender inequalities in research institution and university, okay? So at the beginning, I already mentioned that at the beginning, responsible research innovation was mainly focused on gender equality. But what we can observe, and we're going to see this in a minute, is that nowadays there is a shift from the mere focus on gender equality to the notion of intersectionality, which somehow consider how gender interrelates with and interacts with other social marginalization factors. But we're going to discuss both the notion of gender and the notion of intersectionality in a moment, okay? But before going to the discussion of gender terminology and intersectionality terminology, I would like to focus a little on the gender plus, the so-called gender plus dimension in the Horizon program. So we're going to observe together somehow how the EU, very briefly, because the time is not on our side, but we're going to discuss very briefly the importance of gender in the research program in the EU, and then also to observe how in the Horizon program, so the last framework program for research, there is this ongoing shift from gender to intersectionality, or the so-called gender plus dimension, so adding other factors in relation to gender, okay? So let's see, in general, we can say that, as some scholars pointed out, in these years, in the last 30 years, EU acted as a global gender actor in the international arena. Okay, this means that EU is having had, but is also having a role in fostering gender equality across Europe, but also on an international level. And this is happening despite its structural limits, the one related to the treaty, okay, but also despite conservative political forces that are acting across Europe and also globally, okay? At the same time, as I already mentioned, we can see how in the last 5 years, there is growing interest in fostering also an intersectional view, okay? Very briefly, in the research field, we can say that the commitment to gender equality started in 1999 with the document Women in Science from the Helsinki Group. From 2010 to 2012, we can see the action of incorporating gender in research project. Then there is the first She Figures report, and the notion of gender in the European research arena, okay, in 2012. And then the role of gender in Horizon 2020. Of course, I would say that in this panorama, the first She Figures report is probably one of the crucial point of development, because EU managed to gain data to show how concrete gender inequalities were and still are in research institutions and universities. Before talking about the Horizon program, I would like to frame it in the broader strategy for gender equality promoted by the EU. We can see that in the new strategy for gender equality, intersectionality is defined as a cross-cutting principle. And intersectionality itself is defined as the need to understand how gender combines with other characteristics identity in order to create some specific experiences of discrimination. What I like to highlight of this strategy is the fact that it takes into account the fact that women are not an homogeneous group. Okay, in the slide I wrote the opposite, I'm sorry, okay? I just noticed it. Women are an heterogeneous group. They are not an homogeneous group. The fact that intersectional discrimination is based on more than one characteristics, and also the fact that in order for the strategy to work properly, this must be, it must be enacted in combination with other strategic framework, such as the one on disability, on LGBTIQ people, on Roma people, on minors, and so on. Then, when it comes to research, the strategy already wanted research institution and university to have a gender equality plan, but we're going to discuss this in a moment. But the strategy provided also already some specific fundings for intersectional and gender research, and also for female-led startup. let's discuss the Horizon Europe program, okay? In the Horizon Europe program, what we can see is that gender equality is defined as a cross-cutting principle to be applied in research widely, and the whole Horizon program, and I mean the research must be aimed at eliminating gender inequalities, but also intersecting socio-economic inequalities. So research and innovation must be aimed at the elimination of social inequalities, in particular gender inequalities, but more broadly, social inequalities, okay? According to Horizon Europe, as you probably well know, having a gender equality plan is a prerequisite in order to apply for fundings. In Horizon Europe, the need to integrate gender in research is even stronger than it was in Horizon 2020. And this requirement was present in the past as well. And also Horizon Europe provides some specific fundings for gender and intersectional research under Cluster 2, which is the program on culture, creativity, and inclusive society. If we want to understand better the gender and intersectional dimension in the Horizon Europe program, we should probably have a look at this document published by the Commission, which is Horizon Europe Guidance on Gender Equality Plans, okay? Here we get to understand better what it means to incorporate a gender plus or gender and intersectional dimension in research. And this document says that university and research institutions are widely encouraged to collect data based not only on gender in order to explore inequalities, but gender plus, which means data on migration, which means data on disability, on low economic social status, and also on the LGBTIQ plus population. At the same time, in their gender equality plans, universities should at least try to consider how gender inequalities interact with other forms of discrimination. And also, it's very interesting because this is the first time that under the framework of research and innovation, the EU acknowledged the non-binary nature of gender because it advised university to collect gender data beyond the gender binaries. Okay, so it advised a university to collapse sex and gender while collecting data, but to give more importance to data based on gender identity and to collect data based on at least 3 different options: women, men, non-binary people, okay? So if this, I hope that I managed somehow to give you an idea of the relationship between gender and intersectionality and responsible research innovation in the framework of EU. Now, the second part of this training is entirely dedicated to explore and understand together some gender-related terminology and also what it means exactly to apply an intersectional lens. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to discuss some definition, and then very briefly, we're going to well, I'm going to give you a couple of examples of what it means to apply a gender lens to research and an international an intersectional paradigm to research. Okay, so let's start with this second part of our training. So what is gender? Okay, gender is a notion which was born around the 60s, so 1960s, and the idea was somehow to make sense of the inequalities between women and men in our society, okay? The notion of gender was born in order to reject the biological determinism that somehow understand differences in our society as a natural outcome of our biological differences. So gender is a notion which is used to denaturalize inequalities between women and men in our society, okay? Gender is often referred to as a social construct. What does this mean? It means that gender is a way to classify human beings. I shall say a binary way to classify human beings, which is based on the idea that there are two different categories, male and female, women and men, and these two categories are associated with certain characteristics, attitude, capacities, and so on, okay? Gender, according to this notion, this definition, refers to socio-cultural norms, identities, and relation that structures our society and organization on one side, but also shape behaviors, products, technologies, knowledge, okay, and also in general the environment. Of course, gender as a social construct change across time and space, okay? So, according to this idea, gender is not something that we are, but gender is something that we do. So we shall ask ourselves, how do we do gender, okay? And we can refer to the notion, the related notion of gender norms, okay? Here you can see this image from the Gender Innovation website, okay? So gender is produced and reproduced through gender norms on different levels, okay? Because gender is produced through social institutions such as universities, such as schools, social interaction in our own relationship, for example, both romantic relationship or family relationship or friendship, but also culture. So our cultural product, art, advertisement, and so on, literature, okay? At the same time, gender itself produces social and cultural expectation on which behavior, preferences, attitude, profession, knowledge are appropriate for women and men. And I'm mentioning women and men, again, this binary option, because of this system does not include any other option, but we're going to discuss this in a moment, okay? Gender norms draw upon, but also reinforce gender stereotypes about women and men, okay? At the same time, gender norms are reinforced by discrimination in our society and an equal distribution of resources in the workplace, for example, but also in our own families and in other institutions such as university. okay? So, to sum up, we can say that according to this system, which we can somehow describe as an essentialist view of gender, gender is a social relationship, a relationship of oppression somehow, okay? An imbalanced relationship between women and men. It is a system which organizes society in two different categories, and it is also a system where sex and gender collapse, and also there is no space for different sexual orientation, except from the one considered appropriate, which is heterosexuality. But we're going to discuss each of these terminology in a moment. Why? Because actually, when we look at the reality of gender, gender it cannot be described as a binary system, but somehow each and every one of us have a more complex experience of gender. We can describe gender, and this is what a scholar, Mackenzie, did in 1999, more like a galaxy rather than a binary, okay? So actually, if we want to have a proper understanding of gender, we need to scorporate each and every one of these aspects, understand how it works, and now, of course, these aspects are present in each and every one of us, even if they can be distinguished one from another, okay? So in order to do this, okay, we should start by defining sex, okay? So sex refers to biology. And biology, on the contrary of what we are used to think, is not actually binary, okay? So in humans, sex refers to the biological attributes that distinguish what is considered male, female, and or intersex. And this is based on the presence of many characteristics such as genetics, gametes, morphology, which includes primary and secondary sex characteristics. So I thought that it was useful to have a common understanding of the terminology intersex. So intersex, according to OII Europe, means individuals who do not match medical and societal norms of so-called female and male bodies with regard to their chromosomal, gonadal, endocrine, or anatomical sex, okay? So the first step is to recognize and acknowledge that biology actually is not binary at all, but it's quite, well, it's way more complicated than a simple distinction between female and male characteristics. At the same time, some scholars usually refer to, in the gender field, not to biological sex, but they'd rather talk about sex at sign at birth, okay? This notion is a critique to the concept of biological sex, because usually we refer to biological sex, but we are actually talking about sex at sign at birth, because we mentioned that sex is related to many aspects, such as genetics, morphology, and so on. But usually what happens is that sex is assigned to each and every one of us at birth. And most often this is based on an observation of our external anatomy, sorry. And actually, sex assigned at birth usually is a binary code, because this is usually required by most of the legislation globally to be either assigned at female or male sex. By the way, some countries are now starting to give different options to register children at birth. Also, to contrast the systemic discrimination and violation of fundamental rights that intersex people are facing, okay? Then we go to gender identity, which is each person's internal and individual experience of gender, okay? I can perceive myself as male, female, a blend, both or neither of it. Unuseful terminology to know might be transgender and cisgender. Transgender is a person whose gender identity is different from the social and cultural expectation based on the sex they were assigned at birth, while cisgender is a person whose gender identity match cultural expectation based on the sex they were assigned at birth. I would like to mention also the terminology non-binary, which is an umbrella term for people whose gender is not female or male, okay? I have to, I'm seeing that we have 20 minutes more or less, okay? So I'm going to be a little bit quicker about that, but of course I'm open to any question in order to better clarify afterwards. Gender expression, okay, is another important aspect of the umbrella of gender. Gender expression, so okay, we mentioned biology, then we mentioned the fact that biology doesn't influence my own my own identity, okay, in terms of gender. These two aspects might be related or might not be related. Gender expression is another aspect because it pertains the way a person express or present their gender. So not an internal aspect such as gender identity, but the way I express my gender externally. This includes behavior, appearance, so it's all about dress, makeup, hair, but also body language, the way I use my voice and my presence, okay? It might also include a person's chosen name and the pronouns I use. And of course, gender expression may or may not conform somehow the social expectation associated with being either female or male or masculine or feminine, okay? Sexual orientation, okay? It's another aspect because it's not about my identity, okay? But it's about the emotional, romantic, or sexual attraction I feel in regard to other people, okay? And again, this is not related to my own perception of gender, okay? It's important to acknowledge that sexual orientation can be fluid in our life because it can be influenced by our context, our experience, but it is immutable by external forces, which is why nowadays many countries globally have a ban on reparative therapies, okay? Which are, by the way, considered against science, okay? And against human rights, both. Okay, very briefly, gender in research in practice. Some problems might arise if a researcher assumes that women are an heterogeneous group, men are an heterogeneous group, gender diverse people are an heterogeneous group. or on the contrary, that women, men, and gender diverse people are entirely different, okay? Or that difference between women and men are only based on biology. And so on, okay? We do not have time to discuss all these points, but in general, I would like to share with you these two, which is a handbook from the GenderX project about engendering research. And I will share the link with you afterwards. And these are 6 points that a researcher can follow in order to ensure that the gender dimension is considered in their own research, okay? And also I would like to show you the Gender Innovation website, where you can find some concrete case studies where incorporating a gender/sex analysis was crucial in order to understand and properly tackle the research question. For example, this case study is very interesting, and it's on chronic pain, okay? And how both biological differences, but also the socialization related to different genders might influence the experience of pain, okay? We have 15 more minutes to go, and I will like to introduce you the notion of intersectionality, okay? Intersectionality is a notion which was elaborated by Kimberly Crenshaw, in 1989. She is a legal scholar, but intersectionality itself can be and should be credited as a collective elaboration coming from Black feminism, okay? At the beginning, somehow, well, not at the beginning, sorry, when Crenshaw elaborated this notion, the idea behind it was to grant the effectivity of anti-discrimination law. Kimberly Crenshaw somehow suggests that discrimination can be there is a similarity between discrimination somehow. She made this analogy between discrimination and an accident happening in an intersection, okay, at a very trafficked street. She says, if an accident happens in an intersection, it can be caused by cars traveling from any number of directions, and sometimes from all of them. She says, if we need to understand which driver, the single one, caused the harm, then we won't be able to understand it, because the accident is the result of different cars coming from different directions. But we need to understand which single driver caused the harm, then no driver is held responsible. This analogy was describing the peculiar condition of discrimination of Black women, of BIPOC women in the US, okay? And the fact that their experience of discrimination was not solely based on gender, and it was not solely based on race. In order to tackle effectively the discrimination, there is a need to consider the combination of race and gender factor and how they interact in a peculiar way in order to create that particular kind of discrimination, okay? So it is important, it is crucial to credit that the notion of intersectionality comes from Black feminism and the need to inquire race and gender discrimination, but nowadays intersectionality is used to understand power relationship in our society more broadly, okay? So the fact that individuals have layered identities, these are some of the aspects that are usually taken into consideration: race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, class, age, and disability. But these complex identities, on the other side, can create a peculiar form of discrimination, okay? The combination of all these aspects, because each and every one of these aspects is a factor of potential inequality and social marginalization in our society. At the same time, it's also important to understand that intersectionality means more than the sum of the single parts of our identity. Because again, all these factors, we do not have to consider them as categories, but as part of social power relationship that produce material inequalities in our own society. So these categories are historical and social products. They do not make sense per se. They make sense if we consider them the social forces, the social forces that shape these categories. And in general, we need to address the fact that intersectionality becomes even more important nowadays in the neoliberal crisis, but also after COVID-19 crisis, okay? I'm going to conclude very briefly. So intersectionality in research. Why intersectionality is so important in research? Because if we neglect intersectionality, we are somehow neglecting the complexity of reality, the complexity of our life, okay? Actually, there is no single ideal method for undertaking intersectional research, but there are some principles that might be followed. So relationality, complexity, the importance of context, comparison, and always applying a deconstructing lens. It is also important under intersectionality for the researcher to be self-conscious of its own position and reflect in their own or about their own position. Okay. So if there are many different ideas and methods to apply intersectionality in research, we can state that intersectionality in research always serve social justice, okay? Research utilizing intersectional analysis commit to justice, social justice, so overcome social inequalities from their own root, both in its process, in knowledge production, and also dissemination, okay? So research must always be responsive to the context, and it must serve liberatory objectives. And I believe that this somehow reminds you of what we mentioned at the beginning of our presentation on the matter of responsible research innovation. In order to better understand what it means to apply an intersectional lens to research, I would like to show you this website, which is intersectionaldesign.com. And here you can find some case studies, okay, where researchers decided to explore the combination and the interrelation between different factors of inequalities, and how the consideration of this multiple factor served their research, okay? Some case studies are about facial recognition. And in this case study, for example, the peculiar experience of transgender and gender non-conforming people is considered. But also there's another one on the oximeter, where both sex and race are in place and are very important in order to achieve good result, but also data bias in machine learning. So if you want, you can explore by yourself this card, which are very easy to use and intuitive and might give you a proper idea on how intersectionality is a powerful tool in order to perform impactful research. Here, there is a list of some resources. Some of them I already mentioned during the presentation, while there are others in order to have a look and have a better idea on gender-related terminology, ADI terminology, and so on. We can also share this list in the description of the video when we're going to put the whole training in YouTube. And yeah, I believe the time is over, and I would like to thank you for your attention. This is my contact. If you ever want to write me for any reason, I will be glad to read you and have a conversation with you. And thank you. I don't know if we have a couple of minutes for questions.